As many people know, the Chiefs in 2024 were the closest team ever to three-peat. After a Super Bowl run in 2022 and 2023, no team who has won 2 Super Bowls has ever even been back a third time. But with that three-peat shut down, I just want to reflect on maybe the most fraudulent almost three-peat in the history of three-peatians. Now, if you think this is just going to be a salt-induced rage fest as I profanely think about our past 3 seasons, you're absolutely right. But to really begin to understand where my complaint's coming from, we're going to have to go all the way back to 2018. I mean, do you remember 18 and 19? Now, those Chiefs teams had aura. I mean, 2018, we're talking about the #1 offense in the NFL. 35 points a game. Mahomes' magic was taking over the league. Travis Kelce was a spicy white boy. Tyreek Hill was an unguardable deep threat. They played against the Rams on a random Monday night showdown, and it became an instant classic. They were all gas and no breaks. Did they play defense? Hell no. Was their special teams good? You bet your ass they were. They had character, and they were innovative and athletic and fun to watch. And that year, they lost to the Patriots in the playoffs in overtime without getting a chance to touch the ball, and guess what? They had so much aura, they didn't even change the rule. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Bills. And the next year, with largely the same team, they take it up a level. Yes, their offense took a bit more of a backseat to make sure their defense could do what needs to be done, but man, after their bye week, they didn't have a single one-score game all the way to the Super Bowl, where they knocked off in convincing fashion the 49ers. And man, the year after, their offense was right back on top, looking as dominant as ever, and finishing the season 14-2, and got smacked in the Super Bowl. Yes, this is the inciting incident, I believe, to what I'm going to be talking about. But for the second time in many of these players' careers, they had just been ushered out of the postseason by Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr. And you could feel Mahomes putting his soul on the line this game. Yes, the Chiefs' offensive line was banged up, so you knew that their offense was gonna have some struggles, but for the 28 minutes and 37 seconds that the Chiefs had the ball on offense, Patty Mahomes was just running for his life the entire time. The Buccaneers also got a couple cool drive-extending penalties, and everybody rolled their eyes because it's Tom Brady. And well, let's just say he has his own history with dubious calls and winning close games in interesting and sometimes controversial ways. But this embarrassing loss seemed to knock the Chiefs down a peg, as in 2021, they came out with none of the gumption from before. The last 3 years, they had started off their first 4 weeks a collective 12-0, as a hot start was something that we just attributed to the Chiefs. But now they were sluggish. They lost to the Ravens, who, hey, it's Ravens is a good team, but then immediately choked away a game to the Chargers before beating the Eagles and getting stomped by the Buffalo Bills, and 2 weeks after laying an absolute egg against the Titans as they only put up 3 points, as many people started to wonder, was the Chiefs' window closed? And then the turnaround happened. A bad punt by the Giants set up the Chiefs with a chance to take the game into their own hands and set up a chip shot field goal, and the following week, the Packers special teams melted with a missed field goal, blocked field goal, muff punt, all to take points off the board and donate them to the Chiefs in a game that ended 17-13. They would have a couple normal wins against lesser opponents like the Raiders before they would have to take the Chargers to overtime, and okay, the final play is just incredibly Chargery. But it wasn't until a few weeks later that our Lord and Savior Joe Burrow brought them back down to earth, holding onto the ball for a 6-minute drive to kick the game-ending field goal and break the Chiefs' soon-to-be way too annoying trope of just stumbling into wins. And this wouldn't be the last time that they would do this. After the Chiefs snuck into the playoffs, requiring the Broncos to give up a 91-yard fumble 6 when they had the lead, where in the playoffs they would handily beat the Steelers before giving us one of the most exciting final 5 minutes of a playoff game, where they would win the coin flip to eventually knock off Josh Allen and the Bills, who would later get the rule change due to their lack of aura. But finally, in the following week, the Bengals would once again take them to overtime just for Mahomes to throw it away in the second play of said overtime and have the Chiefs' luck run out for that year. So now, I know that was a long-winded backstory, but at this point, I hope I have somewhat encapsulated the Chiefs' fall from the lovable young guns to a more balanced team that has now been to 2 Super Bowls and won 1, and is slowly losing their lusters in the eyes of the football population as they have stolen more than their fair share of wins. But that being said, let's start the true reign of terror, 2022. Now, on first glance of the schedule, 2022 looked like a pretty standard year. I mean, they smacked the Cardinals, beat the Chargers by 3, had a heartbreaker to the Colts where they lost off the back of a missed 34-yarder and a failed fake field goal, and beat the Raiders on one of the most dubious calls I've ever seen that also had the wide receiver's feet getting tangled up. And then after Mahomes threw away the game the following week, they did the Chiefs thing where they just won out. But the general vibe around the league was just different. They were beating teams, yeah, but the explosiveness of a few years back wasn't there. The tricky play calling wasn't there. They were part of 10 one-score games this year and won 7 of them compared to their 2018 run where they were part of 9 and won 5. And their game plan was more about keeping it close and having the ball at the end rather than dominating teams, and sometimes requiring just a little bit more luck than many felt comfortable with. Like, take their win against the Texans. They do nothing on their overtime possession, punt it to the Texans, where on the first play, Davis Mills just decides to run with the ball out in front of his body thinking he's Lamar Jackson, and the defense just smacks it out of his hands. But none of that was bad compared to what happened when they made it to the playoffs. 5 minutes left against the Jaguars. Looks like they're about to bring it into a one-score game as they drive down the field until Agnew secures the catch at the 3, turns and simply drops the ball without it being touched by anybody else, and their following attempt to recover has Jalen Watson making the interception of his career on a one-handed grab. Against the Bengals, they get out to a 10-point lead in the second quarter before Burrow and crew lead this gutsy 90-yard field goal drive where, in the second half, despite a pair of touchdowns, they seemed to be deadlocked with 41 seconds left in the game, and it looked like it was about to go to overtime before their punter lined up and in the biggest punt of his career piped it low and down the middle, giving up a huge game-ending return, which was also aided by a pretty frustrating unnecessary roughness penalty that drove the dagger in to ensure that this game would never see overtime, as that's 2 essentially out of the Chiefs' control things that were just handed to them this game with a poor punt and a dumb penalty. And if you think the Super Bowl would go differently, oh my goodness, were you wrong. The Chiefs' offense outside of the first drive looked dead in the water, as half of their points in the first half were off of, I promise you're not going to believe this, Jalen Hurts making a cut, and once again without anybody touching him, he just drops the ball and then kicks it right to a Chiefs player who picks it up and walks it in for a touchdown completely uncontested. I know. And then the Eagles on their next drive score again, force another punt, and we're in the middle of another successful drive when they had to settle for a field goal due to the time constraints, but that's fine because in the second half, it went Chiefs touchdown, good long field goal drive. Then the Chiefs drive for another touchdown to take the lead, but the Eagles are forced to punt, and here's where we get the disaster. So this ball is supposed to be on the left side of the field when all is said and done. And we can tell this because both gunners have a left side release, but that ball ends up not on the left side of the field, not in the middle of the field, but outside the right hash, which is just about as bad as you could have it go, where they get punished with an untimely 65-yard return, setting the Chiefs up for their second easy score of the night. And then, of course, like the Bengals game, when the Eagles tie it up, a ticky-tack defensive holding call with 2 minutes left in the game ensures that the Eagles are never going to get meaningful time with the ball in their hands again, as Butker knocks through the game-winning 27-yard field goal. And I know Chiefs fans are going to be blisteringly mad at how I describe the game, but the reality is that most of America remembers the game this way. 2 lucky breaks by the Chiefs to make up the difference between how well the Eagles were playing and how well the Chiefs were playing, and at the end of the game, the refs stuck their hand in the pot to make sure the Eagles wouldn't even get a chance to redeem themselves. So whether that's how you feel or not, I think without fail, this is when the public perception of the Chiefs was fully flipped. And 2023 would be another public perception slaughtering. All the glitz and glam that made the Chiefs fun to watch in the late teens and early 20s was completely gone. Their offense was the worst it had been for years. Their luck was swinging back, it appears, on one-score games, as they only won 6 of the 11 one-score games they had this year. And while in the regular season, they didn't have the same notion that they were getting exceptionally lucky, it's just that nobody thought that they were good. I mean, yeah, they started off 7-2 against easily their weaker half of the schedule, but luck was still definitely there. Like against the Jets, Zach Wilson on his final drive just dropped the snap. This is like, what, the third contactless fumble given to the Chiefs in a key moment? Don't worry, there's going to be more. But they also had some dubious no calls at the end of the game against the Viking. On Tua's final play, he also had a no contact fumble on the snap. So in all these one-score games, it just seemed like that if an opposing team could afford to not just hand the win to the Chiefs, they probably would win themselves. And despite them, after the bye week going a paltry 4-4, the rest of their division was doing equally as bad, getting them to a wild card round in the playoffs where many, myself included, assumed they'd be in and out of this thing. That was until the Dolphins had to play in the cold weather and, well, couldn't. The Bills had a chance to tie it up with 1 minute and 47 seconds left and missed a field goal, and Lamar Jackson and crew drove for 137 yards on 2 drives in the second half and came up with 0 points when they could have easily had 2 touchdowns thanks to, okay, admittedly a really damn good defensive play punching the ball out of Flowers' hands, but later in what was easily a dumb pass into triple coverage, Isaiah Likely was getting absolutely bodied while that ball was still in the air, and I'm not sure how it wasn't called. But the most annoying part once again being that the Chiefs just never drove the dagger in. They never did anything with the gaggle of mistakes that were being made by the Ravens, as it once again felt like they were just falling into a win. This time, a win that brought them into the Super Bowl, where once again their offense would be completely flat. They wouldn't get on the board until the final seconds of the first half, already down by 10, and without that and the incredible leg of Harrison Butker being able to drill a 57-yarder to bring them within 4, the Chiefs' only touchdown of the night came off of, you guessed it, a completely out of their control fluke. On an errant punt that came down short, the ball bounced off the foot of a Niners return unit player, giving them the ball on the 16, where they converted that into a touchdown. This, though, would cause the 49ers to lock in, lead a long drive, hold the Chiefs to a field goal, get a field goal of their own before once again stopping the Chiefs in the red zone with 3 seconds left to force this game to go to overtime. And what happens from there is just the general Chiefs shenanigans. They did have a great final drive, but it's what got them the chance to have a final drive that's such a frustrating part. As in back-to-back Super Bowls, they had been handed sub-20-yard touchdown opportunities off of essentially flukes. But as tired as people got from this, as low as the public perception of the Chiefs were at this point, would you believe it could go lower? Let me take you to 2024. Now, if you've been on my channel, you know what I'm about to talk about in 24. Easily the luckiest Chiefs year that has ever happened. They went from 10 one-score games in 22 to 11 in 23 to 12 in 24. The difference is they won 7 of 10 in 2022, which is a little bit lucky, 6 of 11 in 2023, which is pretty average, to winning 12 of 12 games in 2024. And this includes BS like a Ravens player shoe size being a little bit too large, a dubious pass interference call, a Falcons choke session in the red zone, the Chargers, Buccaneers can't come up with this pick and lose the coin flip in overtime, Denver gets their game-winning chip shot field goal blocked, and then when allowing the Panthers to get back in the game, the Chiefs doink through the field goal. Editing Isaac here. Obviously, they doink through the field goal against the Chargers. I was doing this part off of memory. I thought they did it against the Panthers. It was the wrong blue team. Then the Raiders have the Chiefs' 4th contactless fumble to lose the game that we've made in this video. The Chargers again, and then they actually finish out the season a little bit stronger, but with everybody thinking, man, this might be the worst 15-1 team to ever play the game. But then we got to the postseason and gosh dang it, it was happening. Fans were exacerbated as they just watched the Texans crumple under the weight of having to play against the Chiefs, and they looked nothing like the team coming into the playoffs or the team that had just played the Chargers the week before. Then they went on to play the Bills, and with mouth agape, we watched this team that we had been calling frauds all season as they were actually playing maybe the best game of their entire year. I mean, their offense was moving the ball against what we had presumed to be a good defense. Their defense was making key stops despite some dubious calls by refs on incompletion and spots on 4th down, and many people, myself included, began to wonder that maybe I had just gaslit myself into believing that they were bad. Was it really all in my own head making up their luck? And then the Super Bowl happened, and it was like 3 years of good luck finally caught up to them. The pendulum finally swung back the other direction, and the Eagles for 4 quarters were putting foot to rectum. I mean, I don't think I've seen such a half-hearted Super Bowl performance since the Cam Newton jump away. And don't get me wrong, I do think the Eagles are a good team. I just think that the Chiefs also, for once in the Super Bowl, didn't get bailed out by anything for an entire game. No fluke fumbles, no key special teams mistakes, no dropped interceptions. It was like setting the record straight for the last 2 Super Bowls, which just leaves me wondering, who are the Chiefs actually? I mean, get this. They've won 3 of 5 Super Bowls they've been in, but have a point differential in Super Bowls of negative 23 points. And their historic almost three-peat is highlighted by the oopsiest of oopsie fumbles and plays that they had no part in. I mean, a shanked punt, yeah, they capitalized on it, but who wouldn't? And an errant punt that just happened to bounce off an opposing team's foot to keep them in the game, where the Niners, mind you, scored every single possession after that. So if we assume all else is constant, the Chiefs are playing from behind all game, and this has a chance of being over at the whistle in the Niners' favor. So yeah, of the almost three-peats we've seen or will ever see, I think you're going to be hard-pressed to find a more fraudulent one than this.
Life on Jalen Watson. Smith beats him.